Hey guys, today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. Destructive influences in a person's life can often have far-reaching consequences, while for some a challenging environment inspires resilience and success. For many others, it becomes a trap that's nearly impossible to escape. But what if the harmful influences come from your own family? Is there any way out of such a situation? The story of Scarlet Grace killing shook the world with its brutality and sparked international controversy. A family vacation to a tropical resort turned into a horrific tragedy, one that many believe could have been avoided with better supervision and guidance from Scarlet's mother. Scarlet Grace killing was born in July 1992 in the Hartford suburbs. She was the third of 9 children born to Fiona Mowen, a woman with a unique outlook on life. Shaped by her fascination with the hippie philosophy, Fiona had her children with 5 different partners, none of whom she ever married tragically. None of the fathers maintained a relationship with either Fiona or their children after parting ways, nor did they provide financial support. Fiona became a mother at a very young age. Her first son, Halor, was born in 1988. A year and a half later, she gave birth to another son. Silas Scarlett came along 2 years after that. The father of these 3 children, Richard Killing, was of Libyan descent and worked for a prominent construction company. While he acknowledged the children as his own and gave them his last name, he neither married Fiona nor maintained any meaningful contact with the children afterward. Shortly after parting ways with Richard Killing, Fiona Mowen, a single mother, entered a relationship with a British stockbroker named Chris Osborne. From this union, Fiona had 2 daughters, Marilyn, born in 1994, and Christy Kiss, born in 1995. However, the couple separated not long after the birth of their second child in 1996. Fiona, now a mother of 4, moved to London in hopes of transforming her life. She found work as a vendor at a local produce market, where she met a man named Paul, whose last name remains unknown. They began a relationship, and Fiona gave birth to 2 more children, a son, Isaac, in 1997, and a daughter, Kate, in 1998. The family relocated to Devon, settling in a struggling neighborhood with high crime rates. Tragically, Paul left shortly after the birth of their daughter, leaving Fiona to care for the children on her own. By the late 1990s, Fiona experienced 2 brief relationships with different men. From these, she had 2 more daughters, Trinity and Aurora, born 1 year apart. Unfortunately, none of Fiona's former partners took responsibility for their children, provided financial assistance, or remained involved in their lives. Fiona faced immense challenges as a single mother. Without anyone to watch her children, she struggled to maintain steady employment. As a result, the family relied on modest government assistance, which was often insufficient for even basic needs. They lived in a cramped, run-down house provided by local authorities, barely meeting the standard of livability. Education for the children was a mix of homeschooling, led by Fiona, and intermittent attempts to enroll them in public schools. However, these efforts were often hindered by financial constraints, such as an inability to afford essential school supplies and bullying from peers. Fiona believed that teaching her children basic reading, writing, and arithmetic at home was sufficient to prepare them for life. The neighborhood they lived in was one of the most disadvantaged areas in Devon, plagued by crime and social instability. Fiona herself occasionally overindulged in alcohol and experimented with banned substances. Despite this, she made efforts to shield her children from her vices and prevent them from developing similar habits. However, the combination of a challenging environment, lack of resources, and the accessibility of alcohol and prohibited substances ultimately created a destructive atmosphere for the family. Scarlet grew up to be a strikingly beautiful and outgoing young woman. She dreamed of becoming a model or actress and traveling the world. However, much of her time was spent unsupervised, which led her to fall in with a bad crowd. This group introduced her to alcohol and prohibited substances at an early age, while she tried to hide these activities from her mother. Fiona occasionally caught her smoking marijuana. Fiona would reprimand Scarlet, but stopped short of imposing strict punishments by the time Scarlet turned 14. She had started dating often with individuals significantly older than her. To be fair, Scarlet looked older than her years, which often led others to mistake her for being more mature than she was. She frequently attended parties, drank alcohol, and adopted a carefree attitude toward life. When Fiona discovered this behavior, she chose not to impose outright bans but insisted on taking Scarlet to a local clinic for a medical consultation. There, Scarlet was provided with free contraception. Fiona, who had become a mother at a very young age, did not want her daughter to follow in her footsteps. Like her many siblings, Scarlet rarely attended traditional school, receiving most of her basic education at home under Fiona's guidance. Scarlet's striking appearance, a model-like face, long blonde hair, and a slender figure drew attention. Wherever she went around the age of 14, she got her first tattoo and became interested in body piercings, adding several to her face and body. In 2006, Fiona began a relationship with a man named Robert Clark. Rob owned a small business and was by far the most financially stable partner Fiona had ever been with. He quickly built a rapport with Fiona's children, treating them kindly and often giving them pocket money. About a year into their relationship, Rob proposed an idea. He suggested that Fiona and her family join him on an extended trip to India. Rob, who had visited the country several times before and was enamored with its culture, wanted to share his passion for India with Fiona and her children. After some deliberation, the family decided to travel to Goa. The plan was to explore spiritual practices, relax by the warm ocean, and soak in the region's rich culture, tropical climate, and stunning natural beauty. This journey, filled with hope and the promise of a fresh start, would ultimately take a dark and tragic turn, leaving an indelible mark on the lives of everyone involved. Fiona felt uneasy about her partner Rob paying for the entire family's trip to contribute. She withdrew all her savings, carefully accumulated from government assistance, to cover at least part of the expenses for Fiona and her children. This journey was meant to be a unique and exciting experience, especially since they had never traveled outside the UK or seen anything beyond struggling suburban neighborhoods even before the trip began. Difficulties arose. Fiona's eldest son, who had reached adulthood by this time, was dealing with legal troubles connected to prohibited substances, unable to obtain clearance to leave the country. He stayed behind to watch over their home while the rest of the family traveled. Rob purchased 10 plane tickets for himself, Fiona, and her 8 children. In early November 2007, the family flew to Goa for a 6-month stay, planning to remain until the end of April 2008. Everyone was eagerly anticipating the adventure, particularly Fiona's younger children, who were excited to swim in the ocean and relax under palm trees. The family rented a beachside bungalow in the village of Anjuna, located on the northern coast of Goa, known as a hotspot for international tourists. Anjuna offered cheap accommodations, vibrant nightlife, endless parties, and easy access to alcohol and other banned substances. The village was steeped in the hippie culture and ideology, with countless entertainment venues operating around the clock. For a family accustomed to the gray skies and modest lifestyle of England, the vibrant and sun-soaked paradise seemed like a dream come true. The weather was perfect, and the first few months flew by in a blur of relaxation and exploration. By mid-January 2008, however, the family had grown tired of the constant noise, parties, and bustling crowds of tourists. The province's high crime rates and the general atmosphere of chaos also made them feel unsafe. The family began discussing plans to leave Anjuna and explore other destinations in India, seeking a quieter and more peaceful experience. As the family prepared to move on, Scarlet unexpectedly refused to leave. She had formed a romantic connection with a local man named Julio Lobo, a Guam native 10 years her senior. Julio worked as a tour guide for a small beach tourist company. Scarlet's attachment to Julio became the central reason for her resistance, creating a tense situation within the family. Fiona reluctantly allowed Scarlet to take on small jobs to earn her own money. Scarlet handed out flyers and occasionally helped her boyfriend Julio with his tour guide business. Although her earnings were minimal, she was proud of her independence and begged her mother to let her stay in Anjuna, insisting she could take care of herself. Fiona strongly opposed the idea, believing it was reckless to leave her daughter alone in a foreign country with someone she barely knew. Scarlet, however, was persistent and argued that this would be an invaluable experience, helping her learn how to earn budget and support herself for several days. Mother and daughter argued over the matter. Fiona found it impossible to justify leaving her underage daughter behind, particularly in a place with such a wild reputation, yet Scarlett's determination eventually wore her down. Scarlett promised not to drink alcohol, avoid stronger substances, limit her attendance at parties, and never go out alone at night. Julio also assured Fiona he would take care of Scarlett and keep her safe on January 18, 2008. Fiona, Rob, and the rest of the family left Anjuna for the nearby province of Arambol. From there they traveled to Baga, and then began exploring southern Goa with its serene, endless sandy beaches. Despite their tight budget, which had been significantly depleted during the first months of their trip, the family made the most of their time and cherished every moment in early February 2008. Fiona received devastating news from the UK on February 8th. A hospital called to inform her that her eldest son Halvor had been hit by a car while crossing the street. Although he survived, he suffered serious injuries, leaving him unable to walk and in need of constant care. Even before receiving this alarming call, Fiona had been considering cutting the trip short, and returning home, her relationship with Rob had grown increasingly tense in recent weeks, and the family's financial situation had deteriorated to the point where they could only afford a single hostel room for all of them and could eat just one meal a day. That same day, Fiona called Scarlett to share the news about Hal's accident and informed her of the family's plan to leave Goa and return to the UK. Scarlett, while upset about her brother's condition, expressed her reluctance to leave despite her objections. Fiona was firm in her decision. There was no way she would leave her daughter alone in a foreign country during her time on her own. In Anjuna, Scarlett had developed a routine. She handed out promotional flyers for Julio's tour guide business during the day, and occasionally joined him as his assistant in the evenings. She worked as a waitress at various beach bars. At night, she attended parties, spending her modest earnings on entertainment. Scarlett had become acquainted with many locals, particularly those working in the nightlife and hospitality industries along the beach. When Fiona and the rest of the family returned to Anjuna to collect Scarlett, she managed to persuade her mother to let her attend one last party to say goodbye to her friends. Reluctant, Fiona agreed, believing that nothing bad would happen. Scarlett planned to go to the event with Julio and his younger sister Ruby, intending to spend the night at Julio's aunt's house and meet her family the following morning on the evening of the party. Julio unexpectedly fell ill with a fever and decided to stay home and rest. Scarlett and Ruby went to the party without him. They visited several beach bars, drank alcoholic beverages, danced, and enjoyed themselves after midnight. Ruby began urging Scarlett to head home, but Scarlett insisted on staying a little longer, explaining that it was her last night out and she wanted to make the most of it. She assured Ruby that she would leave soon and head straight back to her family, planning to say goodbye to Julio the next day, before leaving Goa around 1 a.m. The two friends parted ways. Ruby went home, and Scarlett stayed behind to continue enjoying the night. Before leaving, the two promised to keep in touch after Scarlett returned to the UK. Scarlett also shared her plans to come back to Goa after turning 18, intending to stay and live there permanently. Tragically, these dreams would never come true. Scarlett was never seen alive again. The following morning, Scarlett's family didn't immediately realize something was wrong. As they were unaware of her changed plans, Fiona assumed her daughter had spent the night at Julio's aunt's house, while Julio and Ruby believed she had returned to her family. It wasn't until closer to noon that Fiona, concerned by Scarlett's absence, called Julio to ask where her daughter was. Julio told her that Scarlett had planned to head back to the family after the party. Meanwhile, around midday on February 18, 2008, passers-by on Anjuna's main beach discovered the partially unclothed body of a young woman washed ashore. Workers at a nearby bar quickly identified the victim as Scarlett Killing, who had been working part-time for them as a waitress. However, final confirmation had to come from her family, who were soon contacted and brought in for identification. Fiona was devastated. She couldn't believe her daughter was gone until she saw Scarlett's body herself at the morgue. According to the official report, the cause of death was drowning, but the condition of the body raised serious concerns that Scarlett had been subjected to prolonged and cruel mistreatment. After identifying her daughter, Fiona went straight to the police to point out the suspicious circumstances surrounding Scarlett's death. First, most of Scarlet's clothing was missing. Second, Fiona noticed multiple bruises and injuries on her daughter's body, particularly in sensitive areas which suggested potential physical mistreatment and intimate aggression. Despite these observations, local authorities seemed reluctant to investigate the possibility of a violent crime involving a foreign tourist, likely fearing that such news might deter other visitors. Officials claimed Scarlet had consumed excessive amounts of alcohol, gone swimming, and accidentally drowned. They suggested that her clothing had been pulled off by ocean currents, and that the injuries on her body were caused by sharp rocks along the shore. The police appeared eager to close the case quickly and pressed Fiona to sign the necessary paperwork. It took Fiona an entire month to challenge the official conclusion regarding guarding her daughter's cause of death and secure a second autopsy. During that time, she relentlessly visited the police station and local government offices, submitting complaints and formal requests. Fiona insisted on viewing her daughter's body again, this time bringing her phone to document the bruises and injuries in detail. She feared that the case would be covered up, that something might happen to the remains, and that she would be left without any evidence. In addition to Fiona's efforts, Scarlet's relatives and friends conducted their own search for clues along the shoreline in a patch of bushes near the beach. They discovered sandals, torn shorts, and a hair clip that belonged to Scarlet. The items were in plain sight, raising suspicions that the police hadn't even bothered to thoroughly examine the scene. The toxicology report, conducted a full month after Scarlet's death, revealed a lethal mix of strong alcohol and powerful prohibited substances in her system. However, very little water was found in her lungs, indicating that Scarlet had entered the ocean after she was already deceased. Fiona was convinced that her daughter had been drugged, assaulted, and then discarded in the water to cover up the crime. She believed the perpetrators hoped Scarlet's body would either drift into the open sea or that her death would be dismissed as accidental drowning. The second autopsy further supported these suspicions, uncovering over 50 distinct injuries on Scarlet's body. Some appeared to have been inflicted by bare hands, including bruises on her neck, consistent with strangulation by fingers. Fiona, her family, Rob, and Scarlet's friends effectively took on the investigation themselves. They gathered information, searched for witnesses, and passed their findings on to the police. One significant lead came from Mike Massal, a British tourist who had been staying in Goa for the winter. Mike frequently visited local bars and occasionally saw Scarlet working as a waitress, according to Mike, around 3 a.m. On the night of Scarlet's death, she entered a bar where he was hanging out. She appeared highly intoxicated, barely able to stand, and slurring her words. Scarlet stumbled over the threshold, falling to the floor and needing help to get up afterward. She headed to the staff area, sat down, and began chatting with two men who worked there. Indian locals, one appearing to be in his 30s and the other over 40. Mike noted that Scarlet seemed familiar with the men as their conversation was casual and filled with laughter. The two men kept making cocktails for her, one after another, around 4:30 a.m. When the bar closed, most patrons left and Scarlet departed with one of the men she had been speaking with. They walked along the beach with the man supporting Scarlet, who was visibly unsteady. She went with him willingly. At one point, they veered off the well-lit section of the beach toward the bushes and disappeared into the shadows. Mike Massal, watching the scene unfold, had no reason to suspect a crime was taking place. He didn't call for help or alert anyone, assuming the interaction was consensual. Additionally, he didn't realize Scarlet was underage, as her appearance made her seem older than she was after Mike shared his account with the police. They quickly tracked down and arrested the two men Scarlet had been seen with on the night of her death. They were identified as 35-year-old Samson Duza and 47-year-old Placo Carvalho, both local residents who worked at the bar where Scarlet had spent her final evening on June 5, 2008. The case was handed over to the Bureau of Investigation, and both men were charged with committing intimate assault against a minor, physical assault, and causing her death. However, both denied any involvement and maintained their innocence. The Goan authorities continued to delay the investigation. It took 2 years to gather evidence and prepare the case before it was finally sent to court in March 2010. Even then, the trial was postponed for another 3 years. Due to a lack of direct evidence, any potential DNA traces had been washed away by the ocean, leaving the prosecution with a weak case. Another major obstacle was the absence of the key witness, Mike Massal, who had returned to the UK and refused to travel back to India. To testify, he cited concerns for his safety, claiming to have received anonymous threats without his testimony, which was excluded from the case. The prosecution's argument began to crumble. Fiona personally contacted Mike and begged him to provide a statement on video, hoping to submit it as evidence in court. However, he declined, refusing to participate even in this way. Heartbroken, Fiona tried to appeal to his conscience, reminding him that while he hadn't intervened to save her daughter that night, he could at least help bring her perpetrators to justice. Even this failed to persuade him. Meanwhile, investigators in Goa attempted to shift the blame onto Scarlet herself. They argued that she had overindulged in alcohol consumed, prohibited substances, and either gone swimming or fallen asleep on the beach, leading to accidental drowning. Scarlet's personal journal was confiscated and scrutinized with investigators, highlighting entries in which she expressed homesickness. These were misinterpreted as signs of depression and used to suggest she may have intentionally ended her life. Fiona actively countered these claims in court, presenting her own evidence to refute the accusations. Despite her efforts, the legal process dragged on for an agonizing 11 years, leaving the family exhausted and disheartened, struggling to hold on to hope for justice. The case of Scarlet killing became an international scandal, drawing intense media scrutiny from the very beginning. Journalists closely observed Fiona and her family, photographing them in public, documenting their living conditions and criticizing their appearance and lifestyle. As a result, the media painted an unfavorable picture of the family. Adding to the controversy, Fiona had separated from Robert Clark, who began giving interviews portraying her as a neglectful mother. According to Robert, Fiona failed to properly supervise her children, allowed them access to Al, and turned a blind eye to other questionable behavior. He claimed Scarlet was a difficult teenager drawn to parties, alcohol, and prohibited substances, accusing Fiona of effectively abandoning her daughter in a foreign country, leaving her to live with an older man. He also alleged that Scarlet stole money from the family, which exacerbated their financial struggles during the trip. In 2012, tragedy struck again when Fiona's eldest son passed away from an overdose of prescription medication following his death. Social services investigated the possibility of removing her remaining minor children from her custody. However, Fiona successfully fought to retain custody and continue raising her family on her own. In September 2016, both defendants in the killing case were unexpectedly acquitted due to a lack of evidence. Fiona, however, refused to give up, accusing the justice system of corruption and continuing her fight for accountability. 6 months later, Fiona successfully appealed the court's decision, leading to the start of a new trial with a different judge. During this process, new details emerged. Samson Duza was revealed to have ties to a criminal network involved in distributing prohibited substances, which were sometimes stored in his home. This connection raised the possibility that he had access to the substances used to incapacitate Scarlet, making it easier for him to exploit her vulnerable state. Placo Carvalho was found to have assisted Samson and encouraged his actions. Though he did not participate directly in the assault, evidence suggested the men spiked Scarlet's drinks with strong substances, leading to her fatal overdose. Toxicology results indicated that Scarlet died before her body was discarded in the ocean. An attempt to conceal the crime charges against Placo were reduced to incitement, since he had left the bar on his motorcycle about 30 minutes before his shift ended. Ultimately, the court fully acquitted Placio and released him. Samson, however, was convicted in July 2019 of assault and causing death under aggravated circumstances. Despite the severity of his crimes, he received a sentence of only 10 years in prison. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.